Am I online? Oh, yeah, I am. Okay, cool. I'm here. All right then. Excellent. So I wanted to do another little video again, just getting a bit more comfy, chatting away here. I'm trying to put something out most days, other than the weekends. Um, I thought I'd take a look at some of the earliest examples of gospels we actually have and when they come into the historical record, because this is fundamental to our understanding of Christianity. Lots of Christians and it's been an item of this kind of scholarship for so long now. They try and push as far as they can back in history the advent of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. So much of what's unfortunately been an item of the scholarship has been that there's no solid evidence to put the Gospels back in the first century. I mean, at all. Actually, there begins to become something of a paper trail in about 130 to 150. Uh, but the Gospels we know of back then are actually Gnostic Gospels, like the Gospel of, and I'll just pull it up, the Gospel of the Lord, just here. Oh, hang on a minute, I haven't shared my screen yet. Have I? No. Let me share my screen. And we're going to just take a little read of the Gospel of the Lord here. It's actually from The Christ Conspiracy, the greatest story ever sold, by D.M. Murdoch, now dearly departed. This is 145 AD, around about 130 to 140 or ish, thereabouts. This is Marcion's Gospel. We have it because Irenaeus wrote a scathing critique of Marcion, in against Marcion, in around about 170 AD. And of course, this is this is over a century after Jesus is supposed to walk the earth. And Marcion's Gospel is very different this is the first Gospel that enters the historical record as a matter of fact, as an actual item of fact. They might have been in existence, we just don't know about them, but it's most likely that this is, and of course this is a different gospel to Matthew, Luke, and John's. It's much more like Mark's, but this again, we don't have the full gospel. It's termed as a Lucan, or a Lucan, Al Lucas gospel, I think the name is. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But here it is. I mean, you might already be reading this, but I'm just gonna skim through it. Originally in Syrian, Aramaic, or Samaritan Hebrew, so goes the argument. Marcion's Gospel of the Lord, which predated the canonical Gospels by decade, represents the basic Gospel narrative minus key elements that foster the Jesus historicizing agenda. Although much the same as the later Gospel of Luke, Marcion's Gospel was Gnostic, non-historical, and did not make Jesus a Jewish man. This Jesus was not born in Bethlehem and did not grow up in Nazareth, which evidently did not exist as a populated town at the time. Just to stop there, this is reasonably certain to be the truth. And I've got the book by the man that did a lot of the archaeology in Nazareth, and he found that there is actually no good solid reasoning to assume that Nazareth existed in the time of Jesus, and that Nazorian or Nazaroi are actually words that connote a different meaning, and are epithets and titles given to early groups of proto-Christians who are still very Jewish. But we'll go into that at another point. In Marcion's Gospel, there is no childhood history, as Marcion's Jesus was not born not born, but came down at Capernaum, appeared out of thin air in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, 27 to 8 AD CE. So this fits 27 to 28 AD, of course, fits with what the other Gospels generally tell us. The very sentence used in Luke to prove Jesus' history. So this might be, and there are other reasons to believe this might have been the actual first Gospel. This term, came down or descended, was interpreted in antiquity to mean that Jesus descended in a celestial adult body directly from heaven, a non-historical Gnostic belief. I do want to talk about quickly, what was it? Yeah, the Sayings Gospel of Thomas. Again, might represent a version of this Q document that a lot of people talk about, but there's no real clear, strong, strenuous evidence for. And many people have written books that tell us that there's no need. You can just throw out the notion of Q. However, it is interesting to note that Q as the Gospel of Thomas might actually make some sense, because the Thomas Gospel is a sayings gospel. It's pretty basic. It's about 108 sayings. It follows the kind of lineage, the literary kind of lineage of Psalms and many other pieces of Old Testament kind of writing. It's beautiful. It's very much can be harmonized with a lot of ideas from the East, Buddhism and so on. And Buddhism, again, another thing I want to look into going forward. Buddhism and Christianity are very similarly aligned, and it might well have been that Buddhists from the East had made their way to the Library of Alexandria, and there is certainly some reasonable evidence for this, and had been important emissaries in bringing new ideas into Alexandrian religious thought. And anyway, I'm going to continue going. Concerning, and we'll look at that again some other point. Concerning Marcion's Doetic doctrine in Marcion and Luke Acts, Dr. Joseph B. Tyson, Emeritus Professor of Religious Studies at Southern Methodist University, comments Rorakema cites a 7th century Syriac manuscript that appears to quote Marcion as saying, "Our Lord was not born from a woman, but stole the domain of the Creator, and came down and appeared for the first time between Jerusalem and Jericho like a human being in form and image and likeness, but without a body." And again, Marcion's gospel gels well with I mean, I might just read you this bit as well. It's quite interesting, this Luke thing, and I think I will. And I know this is a bit haphazard, my video here, but okay, whatever. Well, while it is currently dated by the mainstream to around 50 to 100 AD, the Gospel of Luke is acknowledged by early church fathers to be of a late date. As Waite states, Jerome admits that not only the Gospel of Basilides, composed around 125 AD, and other Gospels admitted to have been first published in the 2nd century, were written before that of Luke. Okay, this is interesting. 125 and Luke here. Now, this, as I said, Marcion's Gospel looks like a kind of proto-Luke. But even the Gospel of Apelles also, which was written not earlier than AD 160, concerning the date of Luke, Price remarks, the first time Luke's Gospel is mentioned in the historical record is about 180 AD, when Irenaeus listed it among 4 Gospels he was willing to accept. So we can assume that 180 date is, it's as John Prices or Robert Prices says, it's the first time it appears in the historical record. It was probably a few decades earlier than that, but we could easily say 150, 160. When Irenaeus listed among us, Justin may have referred to Acts in about 150 CE, but the reference is too vague to be certain. He further states, most scholars today posit a date for Luke of between 80 and 90 CE, but this is simply an attempt to push it back in time as far as possible, as I was saying at the beginning, while admitting that neither Mark nor Luke was written before the death of Paul in 62 CE or the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, and this is this in order to keep within the lifetime of a companion, any random companion, right? To make it look make some kind of basic sense, which is who tradition says Luke was. The Tübingen critics, F.C. Barr, Franz Overbeck, Edward Zeller, date Luke Acts to the 2nd century. Now, Luke Acts, of course, is so similar in composition and in style and in content that these two were likely, as scholars attest, likely written side by side, basically by probably the same author or by a group of people who were certainly very much in league with each other. More recently, Walter Schütz, Helmut Kostler, and John C. O'Neill have maintained the 2nd century date. I'll just finish off here quickly, but citing several reasons the Gospel of Luke must have been written during the latter half of the 2nd century, including anachronisms and doctrines that were clearly developing only at the time. Price offers the evidence that Luke was based on an Eurylochus, which in fact was Marcion's Gospel of the Lord. This is why people say Marcion's Gospel is basically a primitive Luke. This theory explains the differences and similarities between Luke and Acts, as well as the pastoral epistles, Titus and 1 and 2 Timothy, as it posits the writer of Acts and the pastorals were the redactor of Marcion's texts. On stylistic grounds, this research demonstrates that the author of this trilogy of Luke, Acts, and the pastorals was probably the early church father Polycarp. A reasonable theory, I think. It may not be the case, and I'm just reading what Acharya here points out, D.M. Murdoch points out. But here we go. Polycarp was not only hostile to Marcion, demonstrating his familiarity with the supposed heretic, but he was also a contemporary of Theophilus. The terminus AQ for Luke could be around 150, while the terminus AQM would be 170. When first the text enters into the literary record. One wonders, of course, why there was a 15-year gap between its latest possible composition and its emergence in the historical record. So, I mean, just to I'm not going to read any more, but just to conclude, the early datings of the Gospels are an attempt by literalist mainstream Christians to push these stories back as far as is possible to do. We have nothing in the historical record apart from as soon as Marcion comes along, of course, we have something that dates the Gospels prior to the 2nd century, and many really well put together arguments now are being formed by scholars, both Christian and non-Christian, that would state that the Gospels were actually composed specifically, definitely after 70, which is basically mainstream knowledge, but into the 2nd century. And what we know of Christ in any meaningful way doesn't come to us really until about that time. We have Tacitus and Suetonius, as I think I've gone into briefly. I'm going to do every video going forward. So I'm going to do videos going forward on Josephus, on Tacitus, Suetonius, Pliny the Younger, and I'm going to tell you why these, and there's a lot of evidence now that's out that why these basically, where they do state Christ coming along, they're probably fraudulent and date to around the 3rd or 4th century. And when we have references to Christians, as I think we get in Suetonius, I think it's Suetonius, yes, then it's not necessarily anything that we that means anything much. And it's certainly not any kind of eyewitness account. And we can assume that some primitive form of Gospels was already in circulation, and that Christians coming along as an organized body of religious thinkers, again, really doesn't happen until the second century. But I will do more to flesh that out going forward. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be doing some good stuff hopefully in the next few weeks. I'm going to try and structure these a little better as well, and give you some decent quotes from multiple sources. Please enjoy your day, and absolutely, elbow kick and like maul the like button, and headbutt the subscribe button without hurting yourself too much, guys. Please, if you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be I'm going to be going now. Peace and love. Cool.